going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome back to the Country Roads webcast. As always, I'm your host, Jordan Cruz. And before getting in this video, I just want to give you guys a quick reminder. If you would do us a favor, hit that thumbs up button. Giving us a like on this video will really help not only its performance, but future videos performances here on the channel as well. And if you're a West Virginia fan and you haven't already, be sure hit that subscribe button. Helps us and it helps you, as it helps get more of this Mountaineer sports content out to Mountaineer Nation. Having said that, let's get into it. And as we get into it, of course, I guess this update could have kind of been quantified even as a transfer portal update, but the reason that I'm doing it as a roster update is just because the simple fact the transfer portal not currently open. So we had news break of a couple players no longer with the team. It appears they will enter the transfer portal once that window is open. Two players that are, non-grad transfers, and that opens again on April 16th following the conclusion of most teams' spring football practices. You'll have that window there following the end of spring ball for people to kind of solidify their rosters heading into summer and getting ready to go into fall camp. And for West Virginia, we now know of two players that will not be on that roster, and they are no longer shown on the university's official roster if you check it over on WVUsports.com even. So we'll update our roster tracker here on the Country Roads webcast momentarily. But before we do that, let me pull up this article from WV Sports Now and talk a little bit about these two players that have left the West Virginia football team here on our February 5th roster update. And unfortunately, both of these departures are actually from the offensive side. West Virginia losing a running back in DJ Oliver, who I know is someone that a lot of people really thought had a high potential. I think I put out on Twitter, when I heard this news that I was a little upset about it, and someone, responded, why? It's not like he did a lot. And, touche to that, I say. But he was purely potential based, I guess you could say, just because a lot of the coaches had raved about him because he has, C.J. Donaldson's size, but, really good speed to go along with that. So I think that he's a player that could have a bright future wherever he lands. I hope he lands on his feet, and I think he'll have a good future running the football in college football. And then the offensive lineman that West Virginia has lost is another one that had been talked about having good potential in the past, and that's Charlie Katarinchik. The first to report this was earsports.com. You see Mike mentioned in there in the tweet. A source tells me DJ Oliver no longer with the West Virginia football program. The confirmation comes after a report from earsports.com about both Oliver and offensive lineman Charlie Katarinchik's departure. And like I said, since then, both of these guys no longer on the university's official roster. Actually, seems like where there was smoke, there was indeed fire in terms of this. So a roster update now. Looks like players that will enter the transfer portal in the future, but with them no longer on the university's roster means we need to remove them from our roster tracker here on the CRW as well. Here on our February 5th update, let me go ahead and pull up our roster tracker here on the Country Roads webcast, and let's do just that. All right, so if you've been following along previous roster updates last year, or of course this offseason now, you're probably familiar with this document. I keep running track of the scholarship players on the roster. Won't see any preferred walk-ons on here. And the only players that are currently enrolled will appear on the roster once they do enroll. So some other true freshmen that are not on campus for the spring, you won't see on here quite yet. Only the ones that are the early enrollees. But we'll remove DJ Oliver from the list, and I'll slowly scroll so you can get a look at it if you haven't seen it here before. Of course, you can always pause the video if you need to as well. That's helpful at times if I'm not scrolling slowly enough, I guess I should say. And then Charlie Katarinchik, I guess, as well, we should remove from the roster here. But the positive side of this, of course, Cooper Young is an offensive lineman that West Virginia was really high on, as well as Nick Gray, both freshmen last year. They'll be redshirt freshmen this year on the offensive line, and West Virginia has an offensive line that's pretty solidified and pretty deep. And the same can be said of West Virginia's running back room, of course. Jaheim White, a standout freshman this past season. C.J. Donaldson, a standout freshman 2 years ago, and West Virginia bringing in two really good freshmen in this class as well, with Dior Hubbard and Dunbar as well. Both of those really good running backs there. I'll scroll through the rest of this roster. I know I've removed Katarinchik and Oliver now, so no other changes here on the defensive side for West Virginia. This is pretty much what is expected West Virginia's roster will look like here heading into spring football anyway, and certainly there will be some changes after spring practice. West Virginia will add some players to the secondary. I believe it's a safety spot. Get some guys in there to get in the mix, at the deep safety positions, and potentially at the spear spot there as well. West Virginia working in a new defensive scheme this year, believed to be switching over to a 3-4, but this is kind of what it looks like West Virginia will look like once spring practice starts here, about a month or so away now, I'd say. And the Mountaineers, hopefully, barring any other surprises, we weren't expecting to see, Oliver Katarinchik leave the roster, but barring that, this should be kind of the finalized roster for spring football. And like I said, the portal opens post spring, and West Virginia can add some more pieces, and also we'll probably have some more pieces, leave the Mountaineers as well. West Virginia currently over the scholarship limit with the class that they will have coming in the summer. They're fine for now for the spring because it's based on the players that you have enrolled. But for now, we know they won't have DJ Oliver or Charlie Katarinchik. Both those guys will probably enter the portal once it opens on April 16th. But that's the roster as it stands right now on our February 5th WVU football roster update here on the Country Roads webcast. Kind of my thoughts there on the departures of both DJ Oliver and Charlie Katarinchik, but I would love to hear your alls. Do you think that they really hurt West Virginia, or do you think they've established enough depth, both on the offensive line and at the running back position, that it's not too detrimental for the Mountaineers? Because that's kind of how I feel about it, despite the fact that DJ Oliver was a guy that I was high on and I thought that he had really good potential and I was excited for his future. I think West Virginia has plenty of good running backs there left to carry the load. And of course, Jaheim White, my favorite player on the roster. You guys know that follow the CRW here. But if you don't, you certainly should, especially if you care about roster, transfer updates, things like that. We always update those throughout the offseason leading up to the season, and then throughout the season, we're always updating roster, depth chart, all that stuff, following snap counts, you name it, here on the Country Roads webcast. If you're a WVU football fan, be sure to subscribe here if you haven't already. If you made it this far in the video, hit the thumbs up button. That helps us a ton. And like I said, be sure to share your thoughts on these departures in the comments below. That really helps us as we continue to try and grow the Country Roads webcast community throughout Mountaineer Nation. Having said that, as always, I'm Jordan Cruz, and until next time, let's go Mountaineers.